All right. Hey, everyone out there in YouTube land, we're about to go live. Okay, welcome to a brand new show. I'm Quinn Wilder, and I'm here with my co host.
Courtney Wilkerson.
And we have this new show idea. And the first episode is going to be us talking about exactly what the show is going to be about.
Yeah.
Because we kind of have some ideas, and I think we have some pretty good, well thought out ideas.
Well, and I think we had the same idea at different times, and you contacted me. I was like, oh yeah, I had that idea.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah.
And so I know I'd been thinking about this for a while, and then my other show is a show kind of represented by my nonprofit called Food Freedom Milwaukee, and you came on the show, and we kind of made that. I've been kind of doing this lately, kind of making the connection between kind of asking the question, and this reminds me of the Paulo Freire pedagogy of the oppressed, his questioning style when he'd go into a village. I feel like I was doing that to myself.
Yeah.
And I was asking, why is it that we are here talking about struggling for something like food security, food sovereignty?
Mm-hmm.
Why is that an uphill battle in America right now?
Mm-hmm.
Why is that? And so we can, make that connection to politics and policy and go as deep as we want. And that's kind of what we did when you came on the Food Freedom Show.
Right.
And so, then I had been thinking about, a political show. But let me just state really quick, so I didn't quite get there.
Mm-hmm.
You are listening to River West Radio 104.1 FMLP in the beautiful neighborhood of River West. And this show is called Root to Fruit. Right. So, Courtney, do you want to tell me a little bit about maybe your thoughts about what the show is about and how maybe tie in the title? Why did you like that title name?
Well, I like the way that you presented because you came up with the title. I have been struggling I was trying to come up with something with our names. But I wasn't coming up with anything. And the idea of I think we both had the idea of how did we get to where we are now as a people, as a nation, in world history in general. Like, how do we get to this point of we're in this coming into this fascist nation, into this fascism? How do we get here? And I feel like it's important that we explore why we're here and not just look at we're here and just be reactionary to it. And I think that's kind of what you had too. So the idea of root to fruit is, let's look at the root so we can see where did the fruit go wrong.
I got it. Yep, exactly. I think I really agree with that. Absolutely. And thinking about it, like you were kind of alluding to, sort of on the grand level, root to fruit.
Mm-hmm.
Where do we come from, and where are we headed, based on that? But also, because I think I generally see things with a really sociological lens, so that really applies. But I also am a huge psychology geek. I went to school for psychology, and then I went into social work, but I kind of really kept I guess I have a psychological lens as well as a sociological lens. And so thinking about how we know that we keep hearing about things like younger people in society right now, we have a hard time even imagining, I guess. Well, I don't really know how old you are. I'm putting us in the same category. I'm pretty old. You are obviously much younger than me, but at least for me, it's hard to imagine how different would I be if I had grown up with social media being what it is now from the time I was, super young. And we know that what's happening is there's a lot of really, I would say, really negative effects, let's just say, to put it very mildly, to the point where I feel like there's a sense of a lot of people with a sense of kind of an anchorlessness, or at least confusion about there being any, because it's so hard to determine if there's anything that's really true or certain in the world when you hear the news the way it is. We can talk about why is the news the way it is, but
well, and I think thinking about what you're saying, because I hadn't really thought about this very much. I was born in 1983, so like I didn't get like my first cell phone until I was 18. So I'm at that cusp, where we were just starting to get into computers.
So
and
you
stuff
can
like
relate
that.
to the same thing.
And when we were younger, and and I'm sure it's even more so as you get further back.
You're 42. I'm 57.
Yeah. News moved a lot slower.
Right.
You had time to dwell on something before you moved on to the next thing in the news cycle, and that's one of the problems with social media is you don't have time to think about all the things we're being bombarded with, all the things that the government's throwing at us, all the things that world news is throwing at us. So it makes it a lot harder to stand on something because things are moving so fast that you don't have a chance to just sit with something like we used to.
So we thought one feature that would determine kind of the format of the show would be rather than talking about issues of the day and opinions and takes on issues of the day, which is what we're flooded with all the time, is actually be more kind of reflective and introspective and personal about our own journeys, how we've evolved and things that have influenced us that were our roots that result in the fruit that we are today. And then it's better understanding that ourselves that's beneficial, but that may be a kind of a model to include things like positive influences that can become references for people who might say, oh, Courtney said they. I'm sorry, I don't know your pronouns.
Oh, yeah.
Courtney.
Yeah, I should say that. I am non-binary, so I do use they, them pronouns.
I thought so, and I'm he, him, but I think somebody could say Courtney said that they were heavily influenced by, throw out a name, and then go out and then get impacted personally by that who could person that could be sought out and that could be beneficial. But I just think that if a person hasn't, you were talking about social media and how it's almost like getting flooded with stimulation all the time, and maybe that's on a psychological level part of what is kind of being so destructive to people's minds and souls.
Oh yeah.
Is almost like relying on and becoming addicted to or locked into constantly needing kind of to be entertained or stimulated or captivated, having your attention outward somewhere. And the problem with that in terms of psychological development, and so I have a big part of my background is child development. And the problem with that is we need moments of introspection, right? We need quiet time to ourselves.
Yeah.
We need to be able to reflect and process. And I really think that those experiences are necessary in order to form a kind of a strong sense of self, of even of values. It's where we think about what we're talking about doing on this show. It's where we think as we're kids growing up, we think about what happened today. What did that person say? We actually go through a chemical, physical process of intentionally bringing memories and experiences into our more long-term memory that become kind of part of our core self. And what happens when it's almost like the way you would torture a prisoner over a long period of time, like keep them jumping around and not being able to stop and think for themselves.
Well, you think about it and you think about how reactionary people have become. You see a meme on Facebook and rather than stopping and thinking about what that says and then going out and saying, is that true? And then going out and looking to find the source. What does this source say? But not even just one source, like multiple sources. Like you get so many people that just want to go to Fox News or just want to go to CNN or just want to go to MSNBC, and they don't look in multiple places. They don't spend time looking and seeking the truth for that. They just become reactionary and share it without thinking about what the effect of that is.
So like being able to intentionally conduct a relatively unbiased, critical investigation of something, right? That's a skill that's comprised of many sub skills.
Right.
And that probably takes years and years and years of support and encouragement and development to be able to do.
Right.
At least fairly consistently and well. But and on the other hand, so I go to, why is it that people don't seem to be doing that? And it's, to me, it's always lacking the opportunity to develop the skill.
Right.
Which means then you ask, well, what would it take for someone to support that person developing the skill? Let's say it's a parent. And of course, if we're in an environment where that parent is struggling and way overwhelmed and stressed and has all kinds of other issues, does not have the time to provide that thing, then you can get, and if that's happening in a widespread level, you can get generations of kids that are growing up not having that.
Or even if you're like for example, I was raised in a very, very Christian household. It was fundamentally fundamentalist Baptist. So you're not really taught to be critical about your environment because everything's based on faith.
Oh yeah.
You know, and that's another.
So you did not get
thing.
that, but then you had to figure out how to get that.
Exactly. It took changing my support systems.
Yeah.
You know, like I lived in Florida. I left Florida. I left the people who were like that, and I started to hang around people who would tell you to question everything that you see, to tell you to research everything. And, you know, I've developed that over the last 20 years.
Yeah.
You know, whereas the first 20 years, I didn't have that. I wasn't taught to do that.
Right.
You know.
And for me, I don't think I didn't have a super religious family. And although my parents did read pretty much, both books and articles and newspapers and magazine articles and stuff, like serious ones. And then would talk about them sometimes with us. And I got super into politics when I was really young. I remember watching I think it was like the Carter Reagan debates.
Oh yeah.
And I must have been, what year was that? Could that have been 80, 79?
79, 80, 7.
So I was like 11 or 12, and I was asked, my dad was really busy outside, running up and down the driveway, carrying stuff around or something, as, you know, dads might maybe do. But, and I kept on shouting out questions. I'm like, Dad, what did that mean? He said this, you know, and trying to get my dad to tell me like what was going on and trying to keep up. But that was the early beginning of me kind of with my, you know, kind of political, you know, geekdom. But I did, you know, intentionally decide that I wanted to reach out beyond my sphere, which in my case, being a white male, living in very white Wauwatosa at the time for most of my childhood, I wanted to break out of that. You know, and so I think that is part of what motivated me to start thinking critically about why are things the way they are.
Yeah. Yeah, and you see, for me, it was one of those things that I was very politically motivated growing up, but my faith informed that. So, you know, I was very conservative growing up because that's what everyone was around me. That's what I was taught to be. That's, you know, and so I would look at politics and everything would be through that lens. It was probably, I didn't go to college until I was 27, probably a little bit before that. Some friends actually pointed out that there are a lot of my beliefs that I had at the time that were more leftist than they were right, which made me start actually questioning, okay, what do I actually believe? Am I just saying I'm conservative because that's what I was raised? Or am I actually conservative, which I wasn't? And then I became more liberal. Then I quit drinking and went as far left as you could possibly get.
As far left as you could possibly get. So that sounds intriguing to me.
Yeah.
So now, what were any kind of sources of inspiration or learning or background education that you came across, that you sought out, that influenced you early on in that phase of starting to go further left?
I think a big thing that I found that really got me where I'm at now is the Anarchist Library.
Okay.
Anybody who's unfamiliar, there is a treasure trove of anarchist documents from all across the spectrum, from anarchist communists to even further than that. I can't think of the other anarchists because I have my own spot in the anarchist spectrum.
Okay.
But the anarchist library is a huge one because you can find so many different things about sociology, about psychology, about
history.
Yeah, about history. And they're always adding to it. I found a lot of black anarchists, which I'll go over in time. I don't have my list with me right now. But some great anarchists that helped develop what I believe in. And then looking at socialist texts too, a little bit of Marxism, but I've never been that big on Marxism. It's very European. But yeah, I'd say that's probably my biggest one is the anarchist library.
Okay.
And then just I'm a writer. So, like even a lot of fictional writing. I've read a lot of Irish authors. Roddy Doyle is a big one. That kind of expanded what you look at in the world of oppression and stuff like that. Like I've read a lot of Irish literature that dealt with the Easter Rising. Then when Ireland finally won their independence, the Republic, and a lot of nonfiction and fictional stuff about that has really helped shape me because their struggle is the same as a lot of other people struggle with oppression. You can see the roots of that in what Ireland did and how they handled it, and so I love Irish literature for that reason.
Yeah, I've super limited, narrow understanding of Irish literature or history, even though I don't know, I am part Irish, but and only have really read a little bit of James Joyce. But just
James Joyce is weird,
challenging, man. No, but I absolutely loved trying to read Ulysses without any context.
Oh yeah.
And I actually ended up having a friend that was getting his PhD in Ulysses, and he was explaining stuff to me. But that's fascinating. And you mentioned one figure that taught you how to look at oppression.
I wouldn't say any one figure. I would just say like the overall struggle of Ireland and trying to deal with British oppression.
Oh, okay.
Because it's like so many other countries struggle with oppression, which came from Britain.
Right.
Or the way people are struggling with America.
Yeah, I was going to mention Gandhi in India, for example.
Yeah.
Okay, so it taught you that from the Irish perspective.
Yeah.
Were these, and did you say these were Irish anarchists? Or
not necessarily anarchists,
not necessarily, but
just a lot of Irish
liberation
authors.
writers, or just general
Irish authors. One thing that you notice about a lot of fiction has a tendency to lean a little bit more left,
right?
Because it's generally written a lot more by the workers, by the people who are struggling. So generally you can find a lot of most of your authors are going to be more left leaning, especially in Irish literature.
Right. Okay.
And Irish is a far left country compared to America.
I think I need to go.
Yeah. It's a beautiful country. I highly recommend it.
My mom's been recommending for a long time. She went there and walked all the way around it and everything. Yeah. And it sounds pretty great. And she talked a lot about how you walk into, one of the random bars and there'll be people sitting around and just strike up conversations with everybody. It's extremely social.
Oh yeah.
And also you end up talking with, it seems like in general, Irish people are super curious and the stereotype is great with language, but it's true.
Yeah.
And funny. And I think often really well educated.
Yeah.
Right. So just amazing to talk to.
Oh yeah.
People like that. So yeah, that's cool. So you mentioned, and then the other thing you mentioned was anarchist background, and I feel like I have a also somewhat narrow experience with the literature, but I did have a pretty intense interest in figuring out what it was exactly and what I thought about, where I might agree on that spectrum. And the furthest I got was as I was delving in college, I had the chance to really get into Noam Chomsky, and that was a pretty big early influence that accelerated my evolution, I think.
Yeah.
But was that Chomsky professes, if when pushed into a corner, he says he's something called anarcho-syndicalist. And so then I had to figure out what the heck does that mean. And I don't think I could explain it, but it certainly is about how it's kind of like breaking society into smaller ownership kind of groups.
Yeah.
Right. That collectively can have some power. So it's a really interesting thing. I don't know how that would correlate, for example, with, it probably doesn't correlate with Gandhi's ashram and the sort of the communal village sort of idea that he was experimenting with and practicing for a period early on in India.
I think I believe it's close to Bakunin's concept, which is that you would have the way that it's described in the English translation is you'd have little federations.
Yeah.
And then those federations, it wouldn't be based on a hierarchy, but you would have like a socialist federation where the workers run that federation, and it's a small community.
Right. Okay.
It's more of a small community
yes,
idea
that
with
makes
everyone
sense.
working in the federation, pretty much.
So, I kind of feel like we can back up for a second. Because we haven't really, we're obviously talking about things like socialism and anarchy and things like that. And I've certainly really tried to understand Marx. And I've understood Marx to, there's a lot of different interpretations of what Marxism is. And one version I heard that I liked, but probably isn't completely true and accurate, was that Marxism isn't necessarily a political ideology as much as it is a critique of capitalism.
Yeah.
You would agree with that?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, you can get a system out of that, which is where a lot of the ideas of socialism that most people hold on to come from. But yeah, mostly what he was doing was a critique of capitalism. But if you critique capitalism, you eventually come up with a system that works better than capitalism.
And so, and I've also really tried to understand capitalism. And the idea of even social democracy, right, or social capitalism, right, where there is, because I've gone back to the, for example, and I think Chomsky led me here, to look at Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations. For that book, Adam Smith was called the father of modern capitalism. And he is referenced a lot by people on the right who want to get rid of regulations and make it so that there's more of a pure free market and that kind of thing, which is what he describes, Adam Smith describes in the first half of that book. But then in the second half of that book, which gets ignored and dropped, the second half, he says, now, if you don't have a really resilient, robust apparatus, institutions to create checks and balances and temper the capitalists, they will eat and destroy everything. Because capitalism can take on so much power, it's going to eviscerate any chance at actual democracy and eviscerate culture, essentially, and kind of that translate to destroying minds, destroying people, perpetuating inequity to ridiculous extremes. And so I wanted to back up a little bit to talk a little bit about not just say we're talking all of a sudden about socialism and all this stuff, but and I don't know that I call myself or identify necessarily with socialism. But I feel like I'm definitely in favor of far more tempering of capitalism than we have now, more than we even had. We sometimes talk about if we just went back to the taxation levels in Reagan, the Reagan era, we would be putting so much more investment, smart, high ROI return investment into the common good, right, into the general public's welfare. And at that time, I was getting into politics, and I was seeing that was already extreme, and that was already accelerating inequality too much. And by the way, I'm mentioning inequality. Inequality is almost like the result of a failed social contract and economic system. If inequality is, the gap is wide, and it keeps getting wider faster, and nothing is done about it effectively, then you have a cause for changing that system, right? Then of working to change that system, because that system is broken and is not working. And maybe what we've been seeing is finally, from the first presidential race with Trump and Hillary, that we learned that people are fed up with the system not working. And you can say what you want about MAGA or any side, that it's a good thing that people are fed up with the system. I agree with that.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, we're reaching a point, and it's going to come to a point where the inequality gap is going to get so big that you have no other choice but for the lower class to do something. We have no middle class anymore, so it's just getting lower and lower. Of course, capitalism needs that in order to survive. But
keep delivering higher profits to shareholders.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the second law of thermodynamics. You can't have a system that
concentration.
A system that with unending growth. System with there was a third. I can't remember which law of thermodynamics it is, but you can't have a system with unlimited growth. It just can't happen.
And
that's
it's
what
not
capitalism
sustainable.
Seeks. Exactly.
Right.
So, and we see it coming. The No Kings March. How many people showed up for that and are getting fed up? You know. But I mean, if we want to look at root to fruit and where we are now, capitalism, white supremacy, those are big factors.
And the way they have worked hand in hand.
Yeah, exactly. Well, capitalism needs white supremacy because you need to divide the working class amongst themselves.
It's a tool.
Exactly. If you get white people saying, "Oh, black people and immigrants are stealing my job," it's a lot easier to keep them in line.
What about patriarchy?
Patriarchy, of course.
How fundamental is patriarchy when we're talking about patriarchy, white supremacy, and capitalism?
It's built into all of those work together. You have to suppress women, you have to suppress minorities, and the people who are up top are white. And they want to keep it that way.
So, in sum, since we're almost done, I wanted to say what I think in general, what I'm in favor of, and what I have been thought from the beginning of my political awareness, is that we need to be in a society where we take care of each other, a moral society that is compassionate and that strives for equality, and that we could be this could be a really tremendous country if we were able to do that. But I've learned that there are forces that are intentionally preventing any kind of policies that would allow that. And one of the real big ones that would break up concentration of wealth the most effectively, and this is what things like Bernie and Elizabeth Warren keep pointing to, is taxing high levels of wealth and corporate earnings. Maybe breaking up and doing something about the structure of corporate boards so that their only motive isn't profit for the shareholders, and putting some lower paid workers on the boards and things like that to change the votes that can pass. And we can get into all this stuff, and we only have about 15 seconds, Courtney. So do you want to end the show?
Yes. I just want to say I have a show coming up. I'm in the band The No Rights. We'll be playing on Sunday at Sabbatic at 5.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone, for listening. See you in 2 weeks.